Well, we've already had the introductions, but Angela here, CEO of TAAL, formerly known as Squire. And of course, you all know Lin Zheming, CEO of Mempool, which does a few more things than just mining. But I will point out that these two are two of the original gangster miners for Bitcoin SV. They were there right from the very beginning. So firstly, mining is a somewhat opaque operation, I think, to many people in the Bitcoin world. I'll begin by asking Angela, can you tell us a little bit about what TAAL actually does?
Yes, so TAAL is a blockchain services company. We focus on delivering solutions that will streamline blockchain operations for enterprise users. We're publicly traded. We're on the Canadian Stock Exchange. We're looking to graduate to the larger exchanges. But our core business is transaction processing. So we're getting away from being a miner, and we're processing transactions on the blockchain. We had a recent rebrand, so many of you may remember us as Squire Mining. But over 2019, we started really diversifying the business. And we became TAAL in January. Through 2019, we did an acquisition in May, which we acquired some cloud computing assets, or ASIC miners. And we also, just before coming into the CoinGeek event, announced a new purchase agreement for about 51,000 assets to build out our infrastructure. And we're looking to build out that infrastructure in jurisdictions that can really support the transaction processing business for bigger institutions and enterprises and corporations that want to come into this space from data privacy, if they have specific regulation for processing transactions in those jurisdictions. Other things that we did throughout the year was we acquired a piece of software which is called TAAL Orchestrator. That's our cloud computing pooling management system, and we licensed that to clients that are under our managed services. We have managed services, so we have a professional team of leading industry experts that have been in this space since its inception, and they can come in and help you build your out a blockchain operation from ground up, or they can come in and help you optimize your operations. To date, we have one client under our managed services, so we manage over 200,000 ASIC miners that are situated globally, and under management we have 2,900 petahash of computing power. So we've done a great job at diversifying the business, and this is to get us away from being just solely focused on the revenues generated from mining and injecting fiat-based revenue channels into the business.
Excellent. So Lin, you probably differ somewhat from TAAL in that Mempool is actually a mining pool. I don't know if you operate miners of your own.
Yeah, we do have hash rates.
You do, but you do focus also on providing that service for other miners.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I know that Mempool does quite a lot more than just operating a pool. Would you tell us a little bit more about what Mempool does?
Yeah, Mempool is focusing on becoming the infrastructure provider for the next generation of internet. So this is our goal, and to achieve that, we are creating services that can help our developers, application developers, to use the unique writing permission to the blockchain ledger. So only writer running a node could have the privileges that writes to the immutable source of truth, the global ledger.
Yeah.
So Mempool will provide the facility, will provide the API for those applications, for them to have the ability to fine-tune their ways to interact with blockchain ledger. So we provide the read access and the write access through our API to those application developers.
Yeah. Okay. And Lin, I think you make a really important point there that as a miner, you have the ability to write to the blockchain. That is fundamentally the function of a mining operation. Now, we're seeing something happening on Bitcoin SV that's never really happened in blockchain world before. We're seeing rising transaction volume and a rising importance of transaction fees. Now, in fiat terms, it's still a relatively low value, but we've seen the volume of transactions growing on a near exponential scale over the last year. And that means a whole new paradigm, whole new business models, a whole new set of problems for you guys to have to solve. And I'd like to make the point that what you're actually doing right now is pioneering a whole new industry. There's no manual for this. No one's ever done it before, so there's no prior examples to learn from. So how are you going about understanding this market and understanding who your customers are and doing market research to work out how to respond?
Yeah, I think we will stick with our first tier of customers. They come to us, approach us, and ask what miner could do for their businesses. So once we satisfy them, and I think we can make the service to serve more developers. So that's the way we are doing business right now. It is not the miner to just broadcast, to just submit their own APIs, their own SDKs for the applications. Actually, we listen to our developers, we listen to the clients, what they are trying to do, and how we could together to help them to achieve their goals. That will help with the actual demand discovery.
And Angela, I know that in past incarnations you've had plenty of experience with client engagement before. I guess you're going through a bit of a market research phase yourselves at the moment. What have you discovered in terms of what a typical customer would look like? And when I say customer, I'm talking about someone who provides a whole bunch of transactions that wants to pay to get them processed.
What we've found to date is that each project or business that is applying to their transactions of the blockchain are doing it in a very unique way to their business. So our approach is to be meeting with each of these companies and understanding their needs. So it's the type of transaction they're doing, the size, the average size of transaction, the volume of transactions that they're processing. It's what they're doing today and what they're going to be doing in 6 months' time, 12 months' time. So that, just as Lin said, it's about providing a service that is sustainable for the business, but also a long-term relationship and contractual arrangement for ourselves. The things that we're finding that they're coming to us with is it's about the fees. They want to eliminate the variable fee and focus on a fixed fee and a fixed fiat-based fee. And we can, as we learn the needs of these companies and can project what their needs are, we're going to be able to model that out and provide them with a stable fiat-based transaction fee or monthly rate. And so some of these smaller businesses are going to be able to stabilize their operating cost. And it's a monthly cost, and they go about doing what they're best at, and that's developing on the BSV blockchain. And it's again, it's about this, it's the long-term vision of this new market and finding out what their needs are. Because if you all go down the conversation with them, you find that it's also their needs for data on-chain, off-chain, and that's going to, through those conversations, it's going to affect our infrastructure, and that's where our costs are going to apply to this cost model.
Yeah, okay. So Lin, what's important to your customers? Because you've actually got live active contracts with people who are producing transactions right now.
Yeah, so the first will be reliability. Our clients demand very robust of the service so that their business won't go out of order. So we will try to provide many nice of the robots service that can help our client to better use the facility. So this is first. And then we will help them to do multiple experiments on the transactions. And the most important and interesting part is, first, we can invoice them using US dollars, using fiat. And they don't have to care about fees. So the miner take care about fees, miner using Bitcoin token as the resource reallocation between different miners. So we will separate the fee part from the client to the miners. Then we can invoice them for the service, actually the service they actually used. Okay, so the third part will be they are looking to lower their cost of transactions. So if some application has the potential to grow up and they can provide millions or billions or even trillions of transactions, we as a miner, we are very happy to help them to bring down the cost altogether. And you can talk to Mempool directly, and we will help you to reach to other pool to find if we have an agreement that Mempool will pay for your transaction, to pay for the acceptance by other miners for the application. So that through this way, our client will not have to worry about the transaction fees. It should go down. It should go down to a very, very low level, far cheaper than what it is today.
Okay, so you touched on I'm sure that will be a welcome sentiment from many of the application developers out there. I'll go back to where the fee level could or should be in a moment, but you also touched on another topic, the riveting subject of service level agreements. So whether SV is a really interesting example, they may not necessarily have concerns around double spending and zero conf protection. They may not also care so much about how long it takes for their data to get mined in the blockchain. So that's an interesting example, I guess, where they're paying a lower fee because they don't need to pay the higher fee for a service level that they don't need. Angela, I think you were talking to me backstage before about service levels. Can you envisage what some of those different service levels are going to be?
I think you nailed it. It's about the processing time of when they want that applied to the blockchain, and there's going to be some companies that even within the same company, they'll have some transactions that just need to go out, hit the blockchain within the day, and then there's going to be some that have to hit real time. And those will be service level agreements that will wrap contractual arrangements around. And as Lin was mentioning, it's going to be a healthy relationship between both of the mining companies where we will, if you're getting close to that SLA timeframe, there's going to be an operational process where we reach out to each other and get those transactions processed for our clients. And because it's in the early stages of that, further development will increase, efficiencies between those communications between both parties.
Yep.
So we can guarantee service levels for businesses.
So it's competition and cooperation, and I think it was Craig's speech in Arnhem in 2017 where I first heard the term co-opetition. It sounds like that's really starting to happen. So it's brave of you all to offer service level guarantees in Bitcoin, because the time periods that we're talking about are actually subject to a bit of luck, but that appears to be a solution. Let's jump back to fees then. So lower fees, Lin is of the opinion that we need fees lower. How low should they go, Lin? And how do you work out what the floor is?
Yeah, really, just don't know the floor yet. We have a lot of potential right now. But as a miner, we should consider it is not about we can pick up every transaction in the world and collect the fees, because we need other miners to accept our block, right? So if the processing timing and the bandwidth limit the broadcast, the propagation of our block, it will increase our orphan rate greatly. So it is not just about how much processing power or bandwidth you need to take care of one transaction. It is about how the majority of hash rate will accept your transaction. So we have a structure. We have several endpoints of our API to accept transaction directly from our application partners. They submit their transaction directly through our API, and we will build out our filter to make sure that those transaction volume is not affecting our orphan rate. So currently, we have about 4 megabytes of very low fee or zero fee transaction spaces. We use that for VSV, but our hash rate is not great enough. So if they submit the transaction right above or equal to the minimum relay fee limit, that will not cause a lot of problem of our orphan rate, because those transactions are already in other pools mempool. So we can do a lot of transactions through this way. Right now, we can be sure that if the application just submit their transaction at 0.5 Satoshi per byte, the current minimum mining limit, mempool will mine it. If you submit your transaction through our API, we can mine it at 0.25 Satoshi per byte, which is much lower. And we will explore the ability to make it lower. Our short-term goal is to make the fees as low as 1 Satoshi per kilobyte for all of you. Thank you.
Cool. Just back to you again for a moment, Lin. You mentioned earlier the notion of being able to pay other miners to take the transactions, especially as you're approaching your time limit, I suppose. Could you just quickly walk us through the technical mechanism? Like how would you actually be paying them?
Yeah, we have several ways of paying them. One way is that we don't have to need the client to actually care about the fees, so that the client can borrow the dust output from us and use the output to produce their own transaction and make it zero fee transaction. They sign the transaction with SIG hash O and anyone can pay, so that mempool can add their own input to pay the fees, for the acceptance from other miners through this way. This is one of the methods. And we have another method is that mempool will create different versions through the usage of the malleability of the transaction to pay to different miners independently. According to their hash rate record, we will pay different miners independently. So if they mine that transaction, they will collect part of the transaction fee. So this way, we can have several services that is good for our client. They will not have to deal the messy part of the transaction fee. We as a miner will do our job excellently and help the business to more focus on their own business model. You don't have to worry about the BSV adoption. Your clients even do not have to hold any Satoshi of Bitcoin in SV. but they can use the private key to sign a transaction. They can have their data on-chain. And the service is provided by Mempool, and we will help the client to connect to other mining pool for the acceptance of those transactions.
Okay. So it sounds to me like what you've just described is one of the mythical use cases for transaction malleability. This has been a controversial topic in Bitcoin going back to the Bitcoin Cash days. Craig's talked about it a lot, saying transaction malleability is a feature, not a bug. And he's copped a lot of flack for saying that. Pretty much, I think the angle was that there isn't one. There isn't a use case, but you found one. So let's change tack a little bit here. Angela, I want to ask you to tell us a bit about running a public company. Like, what does it mean for how you operate? What does it mean in terms of who you're targeting and how it positions you to target certain client bases?
Yeah, well, running a public company isn't easy. There's a lot of regulation, compliance, and governance. And we have shareholders that we do have to maintain their happiness. And it means that we do have to do our homework and provide a sustainable long-term revenue-generating operation. And it goes back to looking at this new emerging market and figuring out how it's going to sustain, looking at the clients, looking at their needs, and taking it from there.
Yeah.
The difference is that you have to be structured in your approach to creating this new business plan inside of your company, but within this community, it's also about being agile enough to start proof of concepting with the companies that are coming to you and saying, we want processing, we need it now. And so we have to move fast, but keep in this regulatory structure. And I think the one thing as well that we'll find as being a regulated company and a publicly traded company is that because of our regulated nature from our internal controls, our network security controls, our infrastructure controls, et cetera, that's going to help us with our target market. And it's going to allow us to engage with institutions and larger enterprises and corporations that have, that understanding of regulatory oversight and compliance. And it's understanding those needs where we can build, we can maintain that in our architecture and our infrastructure.
Yeah.
And that comes down to going back to jurisdictional processing. Many people ask, well, how is that? Well, some companies may particularly require that their transactions are processed or the blocks are created in a specific jurisdiction before they're broadcasted on the network. And so some of those things we're exploring for larger, potentially larger clients.
Okay. It sounds very much like mining. If people are more comfortable with you and you put more at risk. So if you screw up, the consequences for a public company are a lot more dire, and that provides some level of assurance that you're going to make sure that you don't. So we've only got a couple of minutes left. Let's touch on a slightly more technical topic: miner ID and merchant API. You guys have been trialing this already. Lin, I don't know where.
We are investigating
Yep.
the proposal, and we might use miner ID in the future.
Yeah. Okay. And
We are using miner ID
Yep.
for all of the blocks that are created under our management. We are tagging them as TAAL.com. And it's an opportunity for us to build reputation within the space, especially as we're going to engage new clients. They're going to be able to see our performance as a transaction processor. And it also provides a level of auditability as well too. So when we're going into speaking with our regulators and our financial auditors, they're going to be able to see, easily identify blocks mined by or blocks created by TAAL.
Yep. Okay. So the miner ID, I guess you mentioned reputation. That's something that you see as an asset that holds value.
A big asset, yeah. I think that as this transactional economy continues to grow and more companies are looking for who's going to be their service provider as a transaction processor, it's going to be one way to look up the performance of the company that you want to get into a contractual relationship with.
Yeah, okay. And I guess a comment from me, because I drove a lot of the minor ID stuff. The point of it is to incentivize the creation of a valuable asset, which is the reputation, which you then put at stake well, you don't put it at stake. You risk losing it by not acting honestly. So it just makes sense for miners to kind of behave themselves. So. We've only got 1 minute left. I just want to quickly talk about other business models. So I might throw to you, Lin. So mining requires a fair bit of infrastructure, but there are other businesses that require quite a similar set of infrastructure.
Yeah.
What areas are you looking to branch out into?
I think apart from the mining, we may have the data service provided by miner directly, because all those businesses are connected together. We have the bandwidth, we have already has the data in our hands. So it is, if someone independently, they can provide data services and can make profit from it. So that any miners could do that.
Yeah.
So part of it is the data services, and part of it will be the processing of smart contract server or transaction processing. So that, I think that is the same thing TAAL is already doing.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's all that we have time for today. I'd like to thank both of our panelists, not just for being here today, but for securing the Bitcoin blockchain on our behalf, for writing the Bitcoin blockchain, and for being there from the very beginning. So thank you, Lin. Thank you, Angela.